In today's show, we have another multi-topic episode where first we discuss when is the right to protest not actually permitted in a democracy? And then we discuss, is an apprenticeship better than university for most people?
And now, the TNT Talk Show, daring to go where other podcasts fear to tread.
Hello, I'm Tony Fasulo, and I share the stage with my esteemed friend and colleague, Tayo Boya. Tayo, hello, my friend, once again. I hope you're keeping safe and well.
Yeah, what the hell, Tony? What you going to do? I can't even get my flipping headphone line sorted out. So
While you're distracted and not paying attention, say hi to our audience.
I'm never that distracted, Tony. That's not, it's not, that's not how it works. Once I hear audience, I'm like, there's a video. I hope I can find it, and I'd love to share it with our audience. It's a video of this dog peacefully sleeping on a man's lap. And he says to the camera, he says, if I say CHIC, and then he spells out chicken, she'll wake up. I can say anything else. I can say go for a walk.
Yeah.
I can say play. I can say whatever I want to say. So, but if I say CHICK,
she wakes up.
She wakes up. Now, I'm going to, unfortunately, if you don't have if you're not watching us on video, unfortunately, you'll miss this. But I hope I can do this properly. But this is what happened. So the dog has got her eyes closed.
Yeah.
And then when he says, now watch what I'm going to say, he doesn't even raise his voice. He just goes, chicken. And one eye just pops open and the eye goes, and then she goes, did I hear chicken or what? It's just the most amazing thing. I mean, from dead sleep to full awake. I heard chicken. Someone said chicken. It was hilarious. So like that, when you say audience, whatever I'm doing, audience, what's Tony up to now? Say hello to the audience. That's my trigger.
Oh dear. So you're still not going to do it. I'm going to do it then. I'm going to say hello, audience, on behalf of Tayo.
Yeah, that's a good compromise, actually. Nobody supported me this week, so.
Oh, no, indeed. Right, before we continue with the topics of the show, I want to remind our audience of our brand new Facebook group that Tayo is encouraging everybody to join, called TNT Talkers. And people can come on for free. It's a public group and discuss topics that we cover in the show. Anything you dislike, things that you like, by all means, share them on there and we'll get back to you immediately. If Facebook is not your platform of choice and you consume our content on other platforms, by all means, comment on those. We do get round to those eventually, and please keep those comments coming in because we value every single one, whether positive or negative. Right, let's move on with today's show. And time permitting, of course, it's a multi-topic episode. And these are topics that Tayo, I think they're yours, actually. I'm now thinking whether they are or not. I think actually the first one is mine. And the first topic, I do want your views on it, sure, Tayo, is when is the right to protest not permitted in a democracy? What's your view on this? Do you have one? Or should, in any democracy, everyone should have the right to protest no matter what consequences?
Okay. The type of protest matters, obviously. So I think we'll just take it as read rather than address the issue independently. We'll just take it as read for the discussion that we're talking about peaceful protest.
Okay.
I don't think anyone actually seriously argues that you can have a right to violent protest.
Well, there's clearly some examples of that. Yeah, exactly. We have got examples of that now, and there have been some examples that, all right, didn't look like violent on the outside, but the repercussions were quite severe for the public based on these protests. So where's the line as to what point are protesters allowed to protest and when they're not? I mean, the case in point in the US, for instance, the Capitol building where Trump supporters were actually came up there. They had a right to protest, but at what point did they cross the line where it was, you're not allowed to do this? That's no longer a protest march.
I think if it ever, I don't know precisely what happened, believe it or not, on the 6th of January, or to put it the American way. When they say January 6th in the
Yeah,
American way?
January 6th. Yeah.
January 6th,
2022. Yes.
2022.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure what happened. I didn't watch it. I didn't have access. I didn't have access to live TV because I stopped paying the TV license.
Okay.
For those people not living in the UK, here in the UK, we have to pay a TV license in order to watch, basically a kind of tax in order to watch live TV. And that tax funds the BBC. Now, I think the BBC, I was going to use one word, but because of Tony's sensitivities, I'm going to use the word baloney. But believe me, is my word rhymes with Goldilocks, and it starts with a B. For those of you who, BBC is a
Work
load
that out.
of baloney, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And I refuse in any way, shape, or form to support them. However, my daughter now has grown up and she wants to watch TV and everything. So she's the one paying the license fee. So I'm able to watch live TV, but I haven't actually gone back yet. Long-winded way of saying that I wasn't watching it back in 2022 live TV. I had no idea what happened apart from what I read subsequently. However, what I would say is this. I believe now it might be a load of baloney that some members of Congress said that they were threatened, that they heard people threatening them and they ran and they hid in their closets or broom closets or whatever it
In
was.
rooms in
So
their
if
area.
if a bunch of people show up and they're baying for your blood, I think that's going too far. I mean, that is going to cause fear. That's intimidation. That's just point blank intimidation. And that can't be all right. Now, standing outside someone's window with a pitchfork and a torch, which is my favorite suggestion, right? We're standing outside your window. We're not trying to break in. You know, the pitchforks are symbolic. We're not setting anything on fire. The torches are symbolic. We're expressing our rage. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But when it crosses over into physical damage, threats of violence or actual violence, then it's democracy or no democracy. You can't do that because we have to look to run an orderly society, and we can't. You encourage side A to do that, then side B will want to do that, and then all of a sudden you got civil war. So at some point, we've got to be able to say no. But non-violent protest, that's what democracy is
Democracy is
built
about
on.
fundamental right, isn't it?
We should not fundamental rights. I mean, how do you argue for a political point if you're not allowed to argue a political point? So you can't really say you have a democracy because you're not able to choose points. I've never been against the English Defense League, I think they're called, the
Yeah,
EDL,
EDL. Yeah.
English Defense League. Now, supposedly they're ultra racist. They don't like black people. I think they want to send us all home or something. But I'm never going to be one of those people to say no, they're not allowed to meet and to try to disseminate their ideas. Because if their ideas are good ideas, then even though my ox gets gored, maybe the country should go down that route. I happen to feel the ideas are not great, and I believe that a bad idea will always be destroyed by a good idea. A bad argument will always fail to a good argument. So we don't really have anything to be worried about, in my opinion.
Indeed, indeed. I mean, I think the right of protest, it's very difficult now because, I mean, you've clearly set out about the violent element. If somebody is threatened directly or there's violence or there's damage to property, that's a bit of a grey area because there are some rights activists in the UK, for instance, who have stopped traffic as part of their campaign, or
Mm.
they've glued themselves to buildings. That in itself should be permitted. They're allowed, they've got a right to do that. But when the resulting elements are unduly affecting members of the public in such a fashion that it causes them harm, and a typical example of that was, I think it was people couldn't leave or couldn't get when the well, okay, I'll mention them particularly. There was one protest group called Just Stop Oil, and
Mm-hmm.
they stopped traffic and said that they didn't want any traffic to move. But the consequence of that was ambulances couldn't take people who were severely ill
Mm-hmm.
and dying to hospital. And subsequently, those people lost their lives through no fault of the ambulance, but because the protesters had blocked the road and they hadn't given any advance notice that they were doing that. So, special routes could have been figured out for the emergency services, for instance. So those tactics should be stopped. They should not be permitted, in my opinion, because that's when you're crossing the line. So even though your action doesn't impact an end user directly at that point, because stopping traffic's just stopping traffic, isn't it? The knock-on effect from that was more severe than they perhaps anticipated, and the poor innocent people had nothing to do with it, suffered unduly. And
Well, and I
so,
hope somebody went to prison for a very long time for that, because it's completely out of order. It's when you see an ambulance coming, if you're protesting, you understand it's an ambulance, but that could be you. That could be your child. That could be your parent. That could be your loved one. So when an ambulance comes whizzing along, we move out of the way. When a police car comes whizzing along, we move out of the way. Presumably, the police car is attending to an emergency. It's trying to get to an emergency. Who knows what's happening, at the other end of that emergency? So we definitely, those are two circumstances where just common sense says, yeah, okay, we are protesting. Just move out of the way and let these ones go through, and then we close the road again. I can understand that. But shutting down the road to an ambulance, of all things, that's just untenable, I think. And whoever was there should have been arrested and thrown in prison. And sir, you remember when I said ceremoniously throw away the key? I think we should have a ceremony in prisons where the prisoner sees a key being ceremoniously thrown away, because they'll never be let out again. They'll all die in prison.
well, I like what you mentioned on a previous show that we discussed about the three strike rule. I thought
Yes.
that was interesting. That's just for the benefit of the listener and viewer, haven't heard. We covered this bit in America. I don't think it's in all states, but some states
Some states.
where they have a three strike rule. Do you want to
Correct. Well,
elaborate?
if you go to prison and you're released, so say you're recidivism, you're a recidivist. You've been to prison, you've been let out, you've committed a crime again. They put you back into prison, and you've been let out, and then you commit a crime for the third time. It's like, you know what? This is it. No more Mr. Nice Guy. No more coming out. Three strikes, and that's it. So I believe it's something like all the time you were let off previously, it's all added back to this new one, and the new one is included, and no early parole, nothing like that. You are
Wow.
going to serve everything now.
Wow.
Basically, you're going to be there for,
A long time.
a very long
I
time.
mean, for going back to our protesters here, for the fact that the people in question here were asked after they discovered that ambulances and people's lives were affected unduly, they said their actual line was, and don't quote me, I'm not quoting them directly, but I'm paraphrasing them. They said, well, it oil is too big a problem. You're going to lose some people along the way.
Hmm.
So this protest is too important. So if you lose some people, you lose some people. I mean,
Well, I've been on a radio program with some people were that fanatical about global warming, where they would definitely have had that attitude. We're trying to save the planet. It's this thing about we're trying to save the innocent. Yeah, but the people in the ambulance are
We're
innocent.
innocent.
So why
Yeah.
don't you start off with the ones in the ambulance? That would be great, you know. they, those people get to me, and the people who deface paintings and things like that, because these are artifacts that hopefully will survive for a long time. It's like, you're doing your thing, and then there's the so-called, I'm not going to use the word terrorist because that's a besmirched word nowadays. Not besmirched. Anyway, uh, the Islamic people, Islamic fighters in Iraq who and Afghanistan. Remember, they destroyed the statue of the Buddha that had lasted in Afghanistan for centuries.
ISIS, you're
I don't
referring
think it was
to.
ISIS in Afghanistan. It was a
ISIL.
Taliban or something. I think
In
probably
Afghanistan, Taliban. Yeah, possibly the
the
Taliban.
Taliban. They destroyed the statues. The statues have been there for donkeys. And it's human history. Just because it's a statue of someone that you can recognize as belonging to a different, is an idol according to them. Yeah, but is anybody there worshiping this idol? It's a statue at this point. It's not an idol. I think you've destroyed it. It's all gone now. It survived. The way I look at it is, it survived hordes of idiots, but not you. You're the ultimate idiot that destroyed the blooming thing. And they went into the Baghdad museum and were destroying things in the Baghdad museum. It's like, what's the matter with you? Some forms
But
of
there's an
protest.
equal. I mean, okay, we're going slightly off tangent a
No, it's
little
just
bit
this
there,
idea of
but
protest. Well, okay, Baghdad
but
was
yeah.
Iraq was never a paragon of democracy.
Although,
So,
but then saying that, you've now got an equivalent thing where the Black Lives Matter movement has
hmm,
spawned off where there's been protests, where there've been previous statues that have been torn down, that have
mm-hmm,
been around a long time.
hmm.
And because they have a
Even in this country,
significance, I
wasn't
know,
it?
even in
Even
this country. So is that protest allowed? Is
no,
that
I
not
didn't
allowed?
like it. This is this chap in Bristol, the statue of a guy, of some fellow in Bristol
It was a slave
who owned
trader or something.
who had owned slaves or something, but at the same time
Oliver
had done
Cromwell,
some.
was it? No, it
No, no,
wasn't
no, God, no,
Cromwell.
no, 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 no,
I can't remember who this was
no,
now.
no, no, no. I don't even think they even had international slavery. The sort of the African slave trade. I don't think that had started out in Cromwell's.
Okay.
Cromwell 1600s, wasn't he? Yeah, because what's his face? The king was knocked off in 16 oh. No, hang on. Elizabeth II died in 1604. So Cromwell was before. I don't know. I can't remember
Okay. Okay.
but anyway, the thing is, where was I? You jumped in with Cromwell. I was talking about Cromwell. Oh yeah, yeah.
The
This
guy,
chap in
yeah.
Bristol. This chap in Bristol. Now he had done other important things, other good things for Bristol.
Hmm.
So I just thought, look, simple, straightforward solution. Beneath saying this and that and everything, say, unfortunately, just add to the plaque,
Hmm.
unfortunately, he was a slave trader.
Edward Colston.
There we go.
I just had to look it up. I couldn't
Yeah.
remember.
Well, this hasn't helped me much. Probably hasn't helped a lot of other people much. At the bottom of the plaque that said, okay, Edward Colston, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, yeah.
Just say, at the end of it, you go, unfortunately, he was also a major slave trader.
But then that's why there's been a bit of an argument of why do you keep these statues in public places of
Because he did
prominence?
other good things. Because he did other things. Very few people are white through and through. Now, I don't mean that racially.
Yeah,
I
in
very,
color. You
very,
mean in as a symbolic of
very few people are good through and through. You can always find. I mean, Churchill, great war leader. Until you ask yourself, should he really have starved 3 million Burmese?
mm,
Poured concrete down the throats. Well, he didn't do it personally, but concrete was
yeah.
poured down the throats of Kenyans. I mean, the terrible things they're going to do about it. But at the same time, he was a great war leader. Now, I would say don't tear down his statues, but you can't say, unfortunately, he did these things too. So you've given people a balanced point of view, and you can see what he did on the positive side, you can see what he did on the negative side. And I think that is better for
think
society.
I
But
think
tearing things down
but the
is
thing, it's almost like a reverence, isn't it? The people are revered when they got the statue up, and it's almost sending the wrong message. And so you can see why some people are, in quotes, offended, about the statues and the significance. So, but
can
tearing them down,
I really see why? First of all, I don't think you should have a reference for anybody. So let's start from that. You can respect a person's achievements. Why do you revere someone?
well, there are
I
there are people that do. They hold
well,
them up in such regard that they.
I mean, it takes all sorts to the rich tapestry of life and all that sort of thing. But I think we can trust people if we put up the counter messages. Well, Robert E. Lee was a great general on the for the Confederation and this and that. But then again, he was fighting for for the continue.
Of the slave trade, wasn't it?
Actually, he was actually fight, and a lot of people don't. I mean, and a lot of people don't understand that he wasn't actually fighting for the right to own slaves, particularly. He was fighting for the right of states to decide whether slavery was right or proper. It was states' rights that were the problem. He was like, yeah, our state should be able to decide for itself whether the slavery is legal or illegal. It's not up to Washington to tell us, that's what the fight was about.
Although it is a federal government that makes I know
Well, that's
individual
the argument.
states.
That was the
Yeah.
argument,
Mm,
actually. Then
yeah.
now it is, but at the time they were arguing that it should be a loose confederation of states where each state does its own thing and power is closer to the people rather than in far off Washington. And looking at the situation today, who can argue? Who can argue?
Wow. I mean, we've moved off topic a little bit here.
We
But
always do, Tony.
yeah, I know. But the point is the right of protest, there has to be a line that is drawn.
Yeah, obviously.
But how could you articulate that so that protesters know that there's certain things you can and can't do? There must be is there some sort of charter? Is there some sort of rule-based right of protest act or policy or something that at least people who want to protest know where the lines are? Or do
There's a
they
big
just
problem now.
feel?
There's a big problem now in that you need, in the UK now, you need police permission to protest, which I think is kind of not the point, is it? You need police permission to protest now. Your local police is it local? Yes, I believe your local police, whoever, who's the head of police, the
Commissioner, isn't it?
commissioner, yes, gives you permission. You tell him, what your problem is and all that sort of thing, and then based on that, you get permission. And
I think it's not a permission that they have to grant. It's a permission where they assess what you're doing,
yeah,
where they choose not to grant. So it's a reversal. You've got the right to protest, but it has to be run past the commissioner for them to sort of check it that you're not
I
doing
don't
anything.
see how what you said is different from what I'm saying.
Because when you're saying they're giving you the permission, that's where they're deciding yes or no. Well, I'm looking at that. You know what? I don't fancy you doing that. That's sort of like the permission. They have authority, but it's not. They've almost got to cast their eyes over it and review it for public safety or for public disruption. If they feel that there's elements of that or elements of danger in some manner, then they will advise the protesters, look, you need to look at this. We're not saying no, we're saying you need to change that. Whereas if someone's got permission, it's like,
All
I
right, what
want to
if the
protest,
protesters say no? That's what we want to do.
they'll say, well, you need to consider a different angle. You can still protest, but you just can't do that bit. So
Yeah, but the whole thing is that we want to do that bit.
well, then you'd have to think of something different because of the consequences of what you're trying.
All right, but we're not going to listen to what you're saying. We're going to go ahead and do it.
Well, you've got a right to protest, so you can, but then there is the risk that we can stop you while you're out there. It's like that.
Okay,
You see
so
what I mean? So they can still go ahead. They've still got the right to do it. It's not that the police can just, oh, you're the protesters. Okay, we'll come down your door, knock on your door at 5 a.m. You're protesting. We know you're going to do it. You're not now. It's not like that. They still allow them to do it, but they will have police presence and hopefully stop them carrying out the acts that they have got the right in their eyes to do. But it is a fine line. It's having the right to protest is a right in a democracy, but it's what sort of disruption are you causing? Because the point is to get your view heard in the public domain. But surely you could make a bigger noise now using social media, and it'll be cheaper because you don't have to mobilize people. You could disrupt people or create a stir, pay for ads, pay for ads on all the social media platforms. I think it'd be cheaper than if you actually protested in a small part of London. How many people hear about protests unless they break the law? Then they make the main news. So protest nowadays, maybe, unless it's a local protest in your vicinity because you're objecting to, I don't know, a new school being built or too many cars in a particular area, then it makes sense to protest there. But if you've got bigger fish to fry, why are you disrupting roads and that? Why don't you take out big ads and give people awareness of what they're doing? Isn't that a better way of mobilizing the public and shifting them to your viewpoint as opposed to, I don't know, causing blockages in roads or
A, it's not as much fun. B, it costs money. It's cheap to just take yourself down to where
yeah,
you've
but one
assembled.
person's not going to do anything really. You get even a group of protesters isn't going to do a big difference. You're talking
Yeah, but
significant numbers.
you're still having fun. I mean, that's
Is that all it's about? Just the fun
well, I'm
element?
being cynical, but listen, your idea, I've had a look now, and it says under the European human rights, and by the way, it's about time. We've had Brexit. What the hell are we still doing in this stupid
What?
European convention? The people. Anyway,
That's got nothing to do with Europe, by the way.
what
That's nothing to
hasn't?
do with the EU. European Court of Human Rights has got nothing to do with the EU
Okay, but why are we still in it? I mean, we shouldn't be. Okay, we've gone solo, so let's just go
because
solo.
the European Court of Human Rights
Anyway,
have got
talking
other
about
people in it as well, not just Europeans. Okay.
talking about being digressing,
Yeah, that was me.
digressing. Yeah, okay. The right to protest is protected under the European Convention on Human Rights and Human Rights Act of 1998, which requires public authorities to act in a way that's compatible with human rights, blah, yada, yada, blah, blah. However, in the UK, the new Public Order Act of 2023 gives the police the power to deny protests if they feel that it will cause, what is it? Whatever. My mouse, my cursor moved. It will cause risk to public health and safety.
Right. So risk to public health and safety is the key.
Risk to public health. So they can actually say, no, we're not going to do that. And it says there's a fine. They can fine or arrest. Doesn't say the courts can jail. It just says fine or arrest individuals or groups who do not comply. So there we go.
So is that beforehand? So though, if they don't comply, so in other words, they then carry on doing.
Yes. So you go to the police and say, this is what we want to do. This is my understanding. You go to the police and say, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to do. It's a bit like you were saying that they can say, yeah, but you can't block the fire escapes over because you can't do it over there because there are fire escapes there and the building catches fire. And then you go, yeah, we don't care, blah, blah, blah. Then they can actually say, okay, you know what? No, you can't go ahead with your protest in those circumstances. And if you do, then you get yourself into hot water.
Yeah. So it is proportionality, isn't it?
Well, supposedly, but for all police states start with proportionality. I mean, it's either
So
you can
how
put.
else do you feel that it could be if a
I
protester
think
wanted to
outcomes.
do it?
I like outcomes. Okay, I think we can look at the outcome of your protest. For example, those people who protested and the ambulance couldn't get through, and then someone suffered, well, death. I wasn't aware anybody died, by the way. But if
I think
people,
the people that couldn't get to hospital, yeah, there's one
well, okay,
person.
so
Yeah.
so the outcome, which was foreseeable, what as a reasonable human being do you foresee as a possible outcome of stopping an ambulance from getting to the hospital in time? It's entirely foreseeable that the patient, the person suffering an emergency, will die. So it can't have been news to you, right? So at that point, the law steps in and it throws the book of them. I mean, really serious, like 20, 25 years in prison, that kind of thing. Truly horrendous. That's because what you did was understandably dangerous. You block. I gave the example of the fire escape, and then there's a fire, and then people die because you blocked it.
Yeah.
Well, that was that was foreseeable. You're going to prison for a long time. Now you do something accidentally, you weren't aware, and a reasonable man or woman wouldn't have been aware that this would have been the consequence. Then it's bad things sometimes happen, and it's not going to be your fault. But the police then becomes advisory. They advise you, say, well, I really wouldn't do that because this
Well,
and
that's
that
what
could
they're
happen.
doing, isn't it? They're not
Because they can.
unduly stopping you. It's only if they believe that it will hinder emergency services and things like that. And clearly, the Just Stop Oil protest, which is the one we're referring to, they they cause real problems. And
And
also,
I'm
some
saying,
members of the public were really heated because they were protesting and stopping them from earning a living,
yeah,
losing.
can you imagine going to a job interview? You
Yeah, there
can't
was.
get
That
there.
actually happened. It
Oh,
happened. There
okay.
were things like that happen. People
That's so
lost
annoying.
jobs, lost business, lost. Um, one of my family members had exactly the same issue. They were going for. He's got his own company. Had to go down to London for an interview for a potential big project that he was scouting for, and
You couldn't get there.
didn't get there.
Can you imagine?
Project, a lot of money, a lot of, it was in the bag pretty much, but he had to be there for this presentation and win the deal, and didn't happen.
Oh, wow.
I know. So that's something that was not good. And obviously, as we know, the ambulance that was blocked
So
caused problems.
my approach is different from yours. I'm saying the police can give advice, but they can't stop the protest.
I don't think
But
they can stop the
haven't.
protest.
Well, I just told you that they can. It's
So
because of
that
this.
new law
Yeah.
actually says so it supersedes the European Court of Human Rights and is
Yes.
actually because
Yes.
the
Because,
European Court of Human Rights says that they shouldn't be able to stop them.
well, I don't know where it says. I mean, I can't read the whole blooming thing. It just says requires public authorities, including the police, to act in a way that is compatible with human rights. The police also have a legal obligation to help protests take place.
Right. So they have a legal obligation
Hmm.
to ensure protests take place. So
Yeah.
that's it. So that's what I mean. They are allowed,
Yeah, but
they
they could
have
tell
to do
you.
what they can to
Hmm.
enable the protest to go
Yeah,
ahead.
but they could tell you, okay, we don't want 100,000 people. That's way too many. You can take 20 people down the road. So I
No,
wanted,
I don't think numbers is the key. I think the problem is if it
well,
hinders
100,000
services.
people in a small area would be a risk. It would even be a risk to their health. Never mind anyone else's.
Oh,
If it's in
yes.
a small area, so they say, no, 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 that's ridiculous. You can't do that. My thing is, in my, I don't know,
Your book.
in my book, thank you. In my book, the police would say, yeah, that's not a good idea for the following reasons: X, Y, and Z. Now, if you go ahead with a protest and X happens, or Y happens, or Z happens, you're going to prison for a very long time.
Okay.
So now you go home and you think about it.
Yeah.
Do I really want to get involved? This is like.
I'm sure that conversation or something along those lines actually happens. I don't think the police say you can't go ahead. They'll just say exactly what you've said. These are what we're highlighting. if you
I'll
do
tell you what
these,
I'll do. I'll tell you
it's
what
an
I'll do.
interesting thing. Whether the police actually have
Next
the
week,
powers to
I'll
stop
pop
the
into
protest.
next week. I'm going to actually roll into the police station, try to get someone to answer me either on camera or on a
No, they won't do it
recording.
on camera.
Well, I mean, the public relations department shouldn't be too afraid of the camera.
No, the public relations. Just
So
a
I'll go to
question.
just a question. My podcast colleague and I are arguing who's right, and then hopefully I'll be able to come back and go, dear Tony, do you remember?
We are a couple of numpties. One of us is going to be wrong, and it's no.
Well, and I'll be so insufferably smug about it. Do you know what they call a calendar event, Tony?
A calendar event?
Mm.
No.
Okay, calendar event is something that happens between family and close friends when someone does something which is forever remembered. So when they say there's this saying that when I'm right, no one remembers, when I'm wrong, no one forgets.
Yeah.
So a calendar event becomes a baseline, and people start saying, it was about 2 years after Tony made that faux pas. Oh yeah, I remember. Wasn't that like 3
It's a
months after
reference
Tony?
point.
It's a reference point
Forevermore.
forevermore. So one of us is gonna have a calendar event out of it.
Oh, indeed,
Wasn't
indeed.
it 3 episodes after you said that the police could never let you forget it?
Oh
Man.
dear. I mean, it is a complex.
You've got skin in the game now, so
yeah, I have. Yeah. I mean, the protesters can still protest, and they should still protest
Obviously, we're in a democracy.
in a democracy. Yes,
In a democracy,
and I think that,
protest about anything, in my opinion.
well, therein
But
lies the
not
problem where
cause.
you keep highlighting some of your favorite countries. They don't have this right.
They do. My favorite country is Russia. You can protest. I
I'm
mean,
not sure.
you don't know anything about Russia, do you? I mean, everything you read about Russia, you get from Western media. I get it from independent media, independent sources. You can't, like in
RT
this
is not an
country,
independent source.
it's not the only source I quote. I wouldn't
Okay.
quote RT in this case. But you can't, even in this country. You want to hold up the UK as a paragon of virtue?
No, not at
Exactly.
all.
So even in this country, there's certain things you can't do. Now, as I understand it, in Russia, it's more or less what we've got here. That if you do not resort to violence, you're fine. However, if you do resort to violence, you start throwing things around and breaking things and smashing things, then yeah, they're in hot water.
I think they're more severe than we are.
Well, yeah, it's a law and order society. Yeah, it's what Tayo would do. You can't smash things. You can't smash things up because you're upset. You can't. I remember well, the name of the group itself is a bit. Ugh. You remember a group called Pussy Riot? A Russian
No.
is it 2, 3, 4 girls? I can't remember now. Pussy Riot. And they got themselves into hot water. I think they ended up in prison.
Russian group. Is this a band?
Yeah, a band, yes.
Okay.
A band. They ended up in prison, I believe. I think they're now in exile or something, and they're not very happy with President Putin. And they were protesting about something. And I believe their form of protest was, by our standards, very benign. It was some form of nudity.
Okay.
But they did it in the church.
Okay.
And yeah, and the Russians have got very strict laws about what you can and can't do in a church. And that's where they got themselves into hot water. So it's just bam, there's no talk about you can't protest, but this particular form of protest in this particular place, you can't do it.
Yeah.
And off they went. So that's what I'm talking about.
Okay. I mean, obviously, you can't protest anywhere. You just can't. I mean, for instance, I don't think you've got a right to protest outside a hospital, for instance.
No. Or inside a museum, which is what some people are doing, throwing paint.
I know.
By the way,
why?
Who lets you carry a bucket of paint into a museum in the first place?
Because museums are not secure places. Why should
they have to be, surely, with all those valuables.
Well, they're not that secure. They've got some security cameras and things.
You can't just saunter into the Louvre and make off with
But
I
you're
don't
not going to. Also,
particularly.
the other thing as well with paint, it doesn't have to be a big tin of paint. A small tin can do enough damage, and you can have that in your coat. So it depends on whether those are being checked now.
Mm,
I think they are being checked now when you come into
ridiculous.
museums. I know, but there was a spate of this where they were damaging high valuable,
Mm,
irreplaceable items, really,
yeah.
which is such a shame. Okay. Right. We've done this topic, I think, to
Yeah, what's the
death. But,
conclusion then?
well, exactly. What is the conclusion? Do you feel that, in a democracy, people are permitted to go to.
Well, they should be. I mean, in democracy, we claim you are allowed to protest, but the nitty-gritty is if it's the wrong kind of protest, you are very likely to get yourself into hot water. If it's pushing a point of view that the modern dem democratic government doesn't like, then you're getting yourself into hot water,
I think, I think you can't break the law for a start.
obviously.
Violence or harm to others.
Well, I can't break the law. I don't see anything wrong with marching down the road.
That's
Not
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 breaking the
not
law, though, is it?
well,
Is
it
it?
is because you're stopping his traffic on His Majesty's. Don't forget, His Majesty's Highway is guaranteed for the free flow of persons and goods. It's His Majesty's Highway in the UK.
Hmm.
Yeah, so you can't do things on His Majesty's Highway that disrupts the free flow of persons and goods.
So is that breaking the law just by doing stuff? That's interesting. Wasn't
Yeah,
aware of that.
yeah, you're breaking the law.
I mean, the other one is
Public disorder, it's called, isn't it? It's public disorder.
well, okay, in particular with the roads. Okay, I wasn't aware of that. If that is a definite
And
thing.
then you've got, if you go into an office building or a government building, and then you go in such large numbers that people can't move around and do things, then you are in a sense trespassing because you're not there on legitimate business from the point of view of what the services on offer, by the office. The office doesn't say you can come and dust down here if you want to,
Yeah, yeah, you can't
right?
do that.
You can't do that. So
So
if you're
does
doing
it,
that, you're
but
trespassing.
the whole point of protesting is disruption.
Yes, it is disruption. So well, but you see, if you're marching down the road slowly, there's a certain amount of disruption, but you are walking, right?
Yeah.
So you are actually going somewhere. So I think it could be argued that although there's disruption, is quote 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 unquote unintended, because all
Right.
you are doing is you're actually
You're going
walking from
really
point.
slow
Yeah, well,
rather
it's
than almost
unintended.
stationary. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but when you're stationed, when you just block the road, when it's like no one can pass. When you crashing over barricades have been put up to keep you out. So if the people who protested on the 6th of January 2022 outside Capitol Hill in America, if they had stayed outside the barricades, well, and shouted for 48 days, no one had said anything, and
No,
that's
no,
their right.
that's their
But
right. Yeah.
you pushed over the barricades, and then
Broke
you
into the
broke.
building,
So then at
harm
that point in
people.
time,
Yeah, yeah.
I think you got issues.
Indeed. Indeed. It's an interesting topic, certainly. So, and it's grey areas all around. There are some
Yeah.
limits, clearly, but yeah, the grey areas is the one that causes the issue. So each protest needs to be looked at individually. But interesting that the police have to vet them, but
Mm.
people can still choose to go against them. Interesting. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on. Another topic. This one is yours, actually. And this is an apprenticeship better than university for most people? Why did you come up with this one and as a point of discussion?
Because my wife told me something that shocked me. I was speaking about one of my troubled students,
He's
and
not university age student. He's young, isn't he?
16, he'll be
Okay.
in a couple of years. He would have been headed towards university if he hadn't made a series of bad choices. So where he's at now, he's never going to get to not foreseeably. I mean, unless it's struck by lightning or whatever happened to Paul of Tarsus, and
Oh,
then he got a conversion. Unless something radical like that happens, he's not going to. In fact, I don't think he's going to make it to the anyway. So I was talking to her about it and saying, I when he gets to be 18, there's this horrible shock that is waiting for these students. They have no idea, and it's one thing I try to force into their heads. You're a minor now. When you're 18, see, one day you're 17, 11 months, and 28 days old, and you're a minor. The next day you're 18, and all the support that you've got now suddenly disappears. No, the same people who were sort of mollycoddling you 24 hours before now tell you, yeah, you need to pack your stuff and get out because this place is for minors and you're an adult now and you can't stay. And all of a sudden, the grim reality of life faces you. And what do you do about it? So I was talking to my wife about this and saying, I don't know what's going to happen. How's it going to make a future for him? She said, well, you did say he's good at math and is good at other things. So he can always get an apprenticeship. And I said, what? I said, oh yeah, even in the medical profession, you can get an apprenticeship. So you don't necessarily need to go to university to become a doctor. And I'm like, sorry, what? Isn't that a bit? Aren't there things that you really ought to know? I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
not you saw someone once jiggle someone's tooth. you you know what's going on, infections and this and that. Says, well, they do. Apparently, an apprenticeship isn't just maybe what you and I have in mind, just following someone around. And
Yeah.
there's a little bit more
Yeah,
to
yeah,
it,
there is more to it. Yeah, yeah.
more to it than that. But and the exams and things and levels that you go through.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there will be a level 1, level 2, level 3, so you pursue more and more, but now it's more or less at your own pace. It's not a rigid program, a 4-year program where you've got
Right.
to jam it in and all that. So yeah, I suppose, there's no point telling you level 2 stuff if you don't have your level 1 stuff.
Yeah, of course.
And if you're stuck in level 1 for 5, 10 years, that's fine. That's up to
Yeah.
you. So then it becomes almost like student targeted education rather than results targeted education, where we just want to find out of these 100 students, can we get 60 out? And we
Mm.
don't care about the other 40. In this, it would be, well, each student is an individual and will progress at his or her own rate.
Absolutely.
And so we will, the curriculum is designed for that. So a level 1 apprentice, this is me guessing, okay? I
Yeah, yeah,
don't
yeah.
know.
Yeah.
A level 1 apprentice is not going to be given a scalpel and said, hey,
No,
come into the theater and muck in.
no.
it
They'll have a grade
might
of
be
what they can and
exactly. It might
they
be coming
can
to
and
the
can't
theater and
cover. Yeah.
clean the floors. There might be that, but not come in and slice someone
No,
open.
no, no. Well, it's the
So
same with doctors and consultants. You've got to be practicing and you've got to have a not is it PhD? I can't remember now, or something
the DD is something
equivalent.
on the other one,
Yeah.
isn't it?
So that's when you can now become a consultant.
Yes, you come a
And
mister.
yeah,
It's funny.
Mister.
You're no
Yeah.
longer a doctor.
Yeah,
You're
you
now a
become
mister.
Mister. Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
Isn't that weird? Yeah. And they
So
become
yeah.
a consultant. And so they can do certain things that a doctor can't do.
Oh no, yeah. Doctors can't. So if you got a heart consultant or one of these people, they are the ones that can even, I believe, prescribe certain medications and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's not up to the GP
No, no,
to do that.
no. So yeah, GP is still up there, but the consultant is just that one notch higher, and yeah, and that gives them a few more brownie
Mm-hmm.
points, so to speak, in terms of
Mm.
that side of it. But they have
Although
to
I
go to
once,
university, and
I
then
once,
they have to still be practicing for a long time. Consultant,
well, I think, the whole thing is like 7 years just to become a doctor, isn't it?
yeah, 7
Is it
years.
7 years just to become a doctor?
Yeah,
and then you've got to something. I've forgotten what the thing. What's the program called? Residency? Is it called a residency or something?
Something like that.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm probably talking nonsense. The doctors will be shrieking now. Okay, so I don't know what it is because hey, numpties. But there's something they do, and then you become you get your whatever it is, and become a consultant.
Indeed.
Yeah.
But
So
not all professions can do this in terms of
I'd hate
apprenticeships.
I'd hate to
No.
see an apprentice pilot because I don't know what.
But they have to do flight hours though. That's the whole point. They have to be
Sorry?
shadowing others as a co-pilot, and then they fly the plane while the pilot is watching. So there's plenty of pilots that do
Yeah, but
this.
that's not.
Let's be honest, I'd rather have
Well,
a
they went to flight
pilot who's
school.
done his
No, but
flight
they went to
school.
flight. Okay, so an apprenticeship, I'm assuming, wouldn't be somebody that goes to flight school because that's not right now. You have to go to flight school, you have ground school, you have all this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, okay, so I would have said that if you're taking an apprentice on, then he doesn't do all that. He
No,
just
they
comes and sits
don't.
next.
Yeah, exactly. They do. That's why they're learning the ropes. They're
That's
learning.
sorry, we're talking across purposes. Anyone who's going to fly has to go to flight school right now.
Yes, indeed. They have to know the
Okay.
basics
All right. So
first. Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
saying that if there was a proper apprenticeship program for flying, you wouldn't have to go to flight school.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, because
No.
all you do is you'd sit next to the pilot and watch him, and he'd be
Oh,
telling you
no, no,
stuff.
no. I think that's
And I'm saying,
misunderstanding
no, thank
apprenticeship.
you.
No.
That's
Yeah. I think we're misunderstanding apprenticeship
no,
here.
because in apprenticeship you've got the standard curriculum. An apprenticeship is that's not going to be your pathway because you didn't get good grades at school and you can't take the standard curriculum. So to be a pilot, I'm assuming you need maths, physics, and science and good grades, not just sort of so-so grades. And that's just for starters. And because so many people want to be pilots, they've got the pick of the
The
letter.
entry level is quite high.
So the entry level is going to be quite high. So then you come along and you didn't get maths because you couldn't do it. You barely scraped through English. So it means when people are talking to you, your handwriting is probably not legible, and you're going to
Be a doctor.
Sorry.
Be a doctor. No, no,
Your
sorry.
handwriting
Yes,
is
I
your
jest.
handwriting is very legible. Your maths is off is not there. You can't do critical
Well,
calculations in your head.
it's foundation stuff, isn't it? If you've got to be able to do a certain profession, you need a clear foundation at the base in order to then elevate yourself to the higher requirements of that.
Isn't this why what
Apprenticeship.
our guest Stuart was saying the other day? He was arguing. He and I were arguing during our 200th show,
Yeah.
where he didn't mind so much that DEI was the criteria that people were getting hired in the United States of America. And I'm like, what the heck are you talking? He said, he's a former pilot.
Yes, he knows.
And well, and I mean, he was our guest. I'm going to have to remain polite, but off screen, I'm going to tell you stuff of what I really thought about what
No, but he's right though, because
it isn't actually.
Well, if somebody has to sign off, unless they relax the rules for signing people off, that's the only thing that
Planes
could
keep
be.
falling out of the sky because people were signed off when they shouldn't have been. During our show, I was trying to remember the name of the airline where they'd been signing this guy off. He'd moved from airline to airline because he kept failing, and then he finally killed people.
But that was just his incompetence. It wasn't he was DEI, but it was because he was scraping through at the bottom level of each. So he's passing, but at the lowest grade. And
exactly. Now I'm saying that it's foreseeable that if you take an apprenticeship program, a lot more people like that would be in the system.
Yeah, indeed, you probably would. But then they would, if you're going to do that, then the top levels of the profession within that apprenticeship, the levels of success have to be even higher. So you're doing the apprenticeship where there's a practical element needed. So you're getting hands-on experience during the learning phase, which gives you experience is valuable, of course. but you still have to pass the academic elements in order to qualify, and the qualification is still a high level. But not every profession needs the practical side. Do you know what I mean?
No, I mean, let's face it. One of the most difficult achievements, one of the most difficult professions in which to reach the top achievement, funnily enough, is not medicine, but but being a ship's captain. Apparently, is amazingly difficult.
Okay.
To be a ship's captain, it takes horrible exams that you've got to pass. You've got to know so much. It's such a high level job that they actually chuck money at these people when they finally succeed. Yet I can see how people can work up from being stand there and steer the blooming ship.
Yeah.
Right. But then you've got navigation, you've got this. I believe that a lot of the palaver in becoming a ship's captain is just being conversant with all the regulations
Yeah.
that needs going. Apparently, there's a humongous amount of red tape that you've got to get through. You've got to really know your
Are
stuff.
this merchant navy you're talking,
Yes,
really?
merchant navy.
Right. Rather than
because if you mess up, it's going to cost people millions.
Yes, of course.
Now, people don't mind if people die. I mean,
Well,
but they mind if it costs them money.
yeah, which is
Um,
a bit of a
I know,
topsy-turvy approach. Yeah.
I know that someone has said. Now, who's the someone? Okay, I'm not going to name the name of the company. There is a company that is presently experiencing a lot of trouble. An aircraft manufacturing company that's presently experiencing a lot of trouble. And someone was asked, well, why haven't they done anything about it? Why haven't the executives done anything about it? And said, because they are not engineers. When the company began, it was run by engineers with a love of engineering. Then somewhere along the line, I believe it was in the late 70s, early 80s, the money men took over. The people, with briefcases and just looking at the bottom line. And somewhere along the line, they worked out that if you lose a plane, it will cost you $100 to $300 million. But if you cut all these corners, you'll be milking in billions. So it's like, okay, well, billions, up to 300, we can afford the 300 million. Go ahead.
Interesting. So you're saying that those apprenticeships have been watered down in the aviation industry, because I suppose
In
there
American,
are
don't
in
panic
American ones,
everywhere.
yeah.
Don't panic in
So
other places.
they were watered down in order to focus on profit, so you get more people through the turnstiles who
No, I'm
aren't
not saying that at
able.
all. Sorry, no. I'm talking about the safety procedures during manufacturing.
Right.
That
Okay.
during manufacturing, when people raise safety concerns, it didn't matter because someone had done the sums, and it's okay. It's a problem. I got this student that it makes me laugh a lot, and I hope his parents don't watch. Well, I'm not going to name him anyway. He makes me laugh all the time because he's got this phrase. He says, "Close enough." Says it's close enough. So sometimes, it comes in like, 49.6 and the answer is 53. He goes, yeah, close enough.
But close enough is relative.
Yeah, well, and then I always make fun of him. I
Yeah.
say, do you know, if you're a pilot and then you get me down in Birmingham when I was going to Edinburgh, you go, it's close enough. What an attitude. No, it isn't. So this people in this airline, aircraft manufacturing company apparently is like, it's close enough. Okay, so wheels fall off, so doors blow open, so
we know who they are. But yeah,
well,
okay. We don't need to
can you
go any
imagine?
further on
But
that
you
one.
know what? It's close enough.
Okay. I'm mindful we're getting close to the top of the hour, really. So is all learning better as an
Not
apprenticeship?
all, but it
Well,
is a
what
very interesting idea that I
yeah.
hadn't considered.
Hmm.
And now that I think about it, I'm beginning to ask myself, well, if it's done properly in the right in the right industries, for example, Do you really need to go to university to learn estate management, to become an estate agent? Isn't it something that you really could do as an apprentice? Because over a period of time, you will come to know stuff. It's like the paralegals. A very good paralegal, you find them shaking their head. I mean, if you go online, just ladies and gentlemen, go online, look at paralegals, maybe say paralegal gossip. Maybe that's a good search term. Paralegal gossip. They excoriate lawyers and solicitors. They think they're a bunch of yahoos because they've been doing this, paralegal stuff, the nitty-gritty of this and that contract. They've been doing it for so long that they are better than the solicitors and the whatnot, but they just don't have the degree or whatever is required. At the end of the day, is that what do we need? A piece of paper?
But the piece of paper shows that you've gone through all the appropriate learning for that particular job. You wouldn't want a dentist or a doctor who's had tons of experience.
No, but that's what I'm saying. I said when it's for the appropriate.
Yeah.
But I did say it's
you want both, though. You want both. You don't want just a paper-based academic.
No, let me tell you what it used to be. Let me tell you what education.
I'm mindful of the time, so you need to make this quite short.
Okay, historically, education was that up to a certain level, you were going to go in industry and you were going to make your way in industry. Then you would get your doctorate and you were going to make your way academically, which meant you were going into research. You were going to further the field by doing research. You had gone beyond the average, and you could now go off and push the state of what do they call again? The state of art? State of the art. Is it? Anyway, whatever it's called. You could push that forward. Nowadays, we don't have that anymore. Everybody goes off. Everybody's got a blooming doctorate now. Everybody's a blooming expert. If we get apprentices again who actually know the nitty-gritty of what they're doing, and by the time they are level 5, level 6, level 7, whatever the top level is, by that time they are masters of their craft.
Well, of course. It depends on what
and they don't need a piece of paper
is.
at that point.
Well, that's true, but they still need the piece of paper to dot the T's and cross the I's, because has it been done to the right manner?
They may have done the job.
It's like a builder. Would you prefer a builder to be qualified or just through experience? Because they could be
obviously,
cutting corners.
Actually, you asked the wrong question. I actually want a builder who knows what the hell is doing, and somebody who's got a piece of paper and makes my building fall down.
No, but the piece of paper will then say that they followed the steps on how to build a building properly, rather than
a degree says you completed a course. A degree means that.
Well, it depends now. We're now changing this. It's not we're changing whether the degree is being policed properly, and people are just buying degrees rather than going through the lessons that need to be done and appropriately judged.
But an apprentice hopefully would have been on the job from day one and has been doing it for 15
Indeed.
years.
There is value in both.
He's passed his exams in order to become a level 7. There were exams too, weren't there? So
well, I think there's a bit of both there. I mean, we're mindful of the time here. We could this topic wasn't sure we would be able to talk on that long, but in fact we've run out of time discussing it, so maybe we would revisit it another time. But me personally, I think it's a balance. It depends. Both are suited for people's careers. It really depends on the individual, and they have a place in society. Both of them do. Right. Unfortunately, with that, we have reached the end of the show for another week.